Welcome to Going the Distance, brought to you by Go Long. I'm your host, Jill Beck. Go Long is a specialized wellness coaching service for women over 40 who are looking for life hacks and tips and tricks on how they can live their best life going forward. To learn more about Go Long, you can visit our website at golong.me and on all of the socials, particularly on Instagram at Just Go Long. With me today, I have Indy Lee, who is the founder of Indy Lee & Co., a very clean skincare brand that I'm proud to be a customer of. But the other fun fact about Indy is that she was my college roommate. Her and her husband actually ended up being my college roommate, as those things work out. And what we're here to talk about is skincare and taking care of your complexion as you're going through all of the things in life. And we hope this to be a very approachable, friendly conversation where you can learn a lot about skincare, menopause, dealing with autoimmune, and all of the things. We're going to be taking questions at the end, but we're going to get into a little bit about Indy's story first. And we're going to also talk a little bit about how skincare and burnout kind of can be related. And we're going to get into all that. So with that, Indy, welcome to the show. And why don't we get into a little bit of the backstory?
Okay. So thank you, first of all, Jill, for having me. So I cannot believe how much we've spoken and now actually been able to see each other. So obviously, Jill is all the way in the corner of the West Coast, and I'm all the way in the corner on the East Coast in New York. And yet we've seen each other more recently, either Zoom or in person, which has been amazing. Jill and I both started out as accounting majors. I know we totally look like that. Jill and I both realized that wasn't our passion. I left the accounting world in 2008. Much to everyone's surprise, I got very involved in the farm to table movement. I think Jill's like, you're farming? What? I got very involved with the farm to table movement. I actually built a 750 square foot greenhouse in my backyard and was bringing edible flowers to Whole Foods, teaching children the importance of what they put in their body, building school gardens, etc. And then was diagnosed with what I learned was my first autoimmune disease, or at least I was dying. It was my first diagnosis, but it wasn't my first autoimmune disease. So I was diagnosed in 2008 with rheumatoid arthritis. And I couldn't work in the greenhouse or the backyard or the farm that I built, which, by the way, my husband was not happy with because I bulldozed the backyard, like legit had a bulldozer come and flatten the backyard, as one does. And I couldn't work in the greenhouse or anything because of my flares. And I started taking ingredients that I was growing in my backyard and in the greenhouse. And my sister announced she was pregnant. I didn't want anything potentially harmful to go on my nephew's soon to be newborn tushy. So I decided to use ingredients that I was growing and create a little line. And everybody at the baby shower was like, oh my God, this is what you need to do. Create a clean line of baby, or as we used to say, a natural, you can't use that term anymore, a natural line of skincare products for babies. And I'm like, that's not a thing. And I shushoed it. And then I always say the universe decided to send me a big sign. Jill knows I'm very woo-woo. I've always been pretty woo. I've gotten even more woo over the years. And so universe decided I wasn't listening, and I started to lose my vision out of my left eye. That was about November 4th. I went to my doctor. He immediately sent me for an MRI. And 45 minutes after walking out of the MRI, he called with the news nobody wants to hear, which was, come in, we'll discuss it when you get here. To which I said, absolutely not, you're going to tell me, because otherwise I will go to the very helpful and always so accurate WebMD, which I'm pretty convinced if you have a splinter, you are dying of leprosy. So I never suggest people go to WebMD to self-diagnose. So I said, I'm going to go to WebMD if you don't tell me. And he said, okay, fine, I know who you are. And I said, I have the keys in my hand. And that's when he said, you have a brain tumor. And I said, I will see you in 15 minutes. I always say that was the most impactful day of my life, most powerful day. My highlights of my life were having my 2 children, but the most powerful day was November 4th of 2008. And as I'm driving to the doctor, it was one of those beautiful fall days, much like now in New York, and the leaves are changing and the air is brisk. And I realized for 37 years, I was a passenger in my life and not an active participant. And I swear that something incredible would come out of this diagnosis. I just didn't know what. I had to allow it. But more importantly, I realized from that day on, I was going to live every day with purpose, every day with passion, and every day be fully present in the moment. And I will tell you, by and large, I do live that way still to this day. I started to fall back, but the universe gave me another sign, which we'll get into in a few moments. And when I got to the doctor, he said, I don't know what this is. It doesn't look like cancer, which it wasn't, but you need to go see heavy hitters. So I went up and down the East Coast, NIH, Duke, Johns Hopkins, Sloan Kettering, and everybody said, I'm so sorry, there's nothing we can do. Get your affairs in order. You have about 6 months. My daughter was 5. My son was 8 at the time. To which I would say, am I allowed to curse on this?
You are definitely allowed to curse on this show.
So to which I would say to every doctor, oh, hell no, this is not how it's effing going down for me. No. And
that doesn't count as cursing, by the way. That I'm just going to say.
No, but it didn't, because I was that doctor. So I said, that's sort of a curse for me. Such a goody. I just didn't believe it was my time. So I swore I was going to find a different diagnosis and prognosis because I knew something had to come from this. So I went to my neuroendocrinologist between the first 2 specialists, and I said, how the heck is this possible? Nobody in my family has anything like this. And he said, we're seeing more and more of these things tied to the environment. I'm like, environment? I eat out of an organic greenhouse in my backyard. What are you talking about? And that's when he said, okay, yes, that is part of the environment. What you surround yourself with, who you surround yourself with, very progressive doctor, I will say, for 2000s. And then he said, let me ask you a question. What do you put on your skin? What did your mother put on her skin when she was pregnant with you? We know babies are born with a toxic load, and we know that it's connected to the personal care products we're using. And it was in that moment, and I knew that, but I didn't put it together in that moment that I knew that this is what I need to do. I was going to create a line that was safe, that was effective, that looked chic on a shelf. 2008 looked like mashed bananas that were browning in a jar that you got at a farmer's market. It did not look like what you see now in the likes of Credo, Blue Mercuries, Ultas of the world. And more importantly, I really wanted to educate and empower others to live the healthiest version of their life. Throughout this conversation, my job is not to judge. It's just to give you information, to empower you with information so you can make the choices that are best for you. And I say that to everybody because everybody's body and everybody's tolerance, et cetera, is different. So I searched for a doctor who was willing to do surgery. And at the same time, I started creating a line in my kitchen. By the way, coconut citrus scrub is the first product I ever formulated in my kitchen. It is no longer made in the kitchen. Just want you to know that. Good to know, right? And so I started formulating, and I found a doctor at NYU who would do surgery. I said, great, let's do it. He said, we're going to do it on Earth Day. I said, fantastic, sign me up. Day to wake up to the rest of your life to start a clean line. Earth Day was a good sign. And then he said, but you have less than a 50% chance of waking up. And I said, I have 0 if you don't do it. So let's go. I basically sashayed into the operating room on April 22nd and said, today is a great day. Time to put on some kick-ass music. And that is when the anesthesiologist asked me if I was taking recreational drugs or drinking, because I've never seen anybody quite so positive walking into brain surgery. I was like, no. And then he asked me to get a social worker because he actually thought I was nuts. And that's when I explained, I've got a lot of incredible things to do. Today's a great day. Let's go. And when I woke up, about 8 hours later, I was able to see out of both my eyes completely. And that's when the doctor said, they got everything. Welcome to the rest of your life. I literally started formulating slightly before that and just went to town and created this line that is now in the likes of Ultas and Nordstroms and Blue Mercuries and Credos and all the clean retailers. I think we're in 2,500 stores globally now and growing. But what's interesting is I got so involved with the business of self-care that I forgot to take care of myself, and why I think this is such a very relevant conversation, certainly for me now as I look at the last 6 months of my life, because I started to notice a lot of things were going wrong. I have 7 autoimmune diseases. Let's see, we've got vitiligo, we have ovarian failure, another ovarian thing where I lost one of my daughter was a twin, which was fine because I couldn't imagine 2 of her right now. Remember, Jill, what I called Emily?
Yes, I do. No comment.
Yeah. So I had issues with pregnancy on both of my children. I had the brain tumor, I have rheumatoid arthritis, I have uveitis, and I have Crohn's. So a number of autoimmune, my body likes to attack itself. And I started to notice a number of things were coming up. And I finally called my neuroendocrinologist and I said, I have a hard time believing this isn't related to something going on in my brain. I was diagnosed with a second brain tumor a year after I had the first one removed. And so we always kept an eye on it and nothing was going on. In fact, 4 years ago, it was shrinking. He's like, this is impossible. I'm like, I'm such a positive person. Of course it's shrinking. And I just had a feeling, I always say, listen to your gut. It tells you everything. And I called the doctor and he said, you know what, you're a year early for an MRI checkup, but let's do it. And before he even had the chance to call me, you got to love my chart. It already popped in and I saw the results that I knew. And within 3 minutes, the phone call rang and I said, I saw the results. And he said, can you come in? I said, I'll see you, we'll see you next week. But I knew I needed to have a second brain surgery. So June 7th, about 3 months ago, I actually had brain surgery, not once, but twice, because I had to go in a second time 2 days later. And I truly believe that it is not just because of, these things happen. I really believe that my complacency in taking care of myself and allowing external forces and stress plays a large role in this. And so I couldn't think of anyone better to have this discussion with in terms of how stress and burnout really do impact your health than Jill. And when she asked me to do this, I was like, yes. I mean, this isn't just about skincare. Yeah, I look at skincare as your roadmap, your face, like your skin health is a roadmap for what's going on. And that's why they have these maps. And if you have it here, it's dairy. If you have it in here, it's sugar, all those things, because it's true. And so that is a little bit about me and why I'm so passionate. And I would say even more passionate than I ever was before about what I do. Because, for me, it was sort of like, okay, I lived, now I'm starting a line, blah, 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 blah. Well, 15 years later, here I am reliving the experience, but with a very different lens. And for me, it's about longevity. It's about enough of the burnout. It's about hustle culture is nothing but a toxic group of words. And how do we as women support one another and our overall health? So that we can have a beautiful life. It's not about the amount of years you live, it's about the quality of the life that you have while you're living it, to me. So that's me. And that's how come I'm here. How is that, Jill?
It was fantastic. I mean, well, your storytelling's fantastic. Obviously, it sucks that you had to go through all that. So we'll just say that that's
honestly, you know how I feel.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, it's a thing. And it's obviously, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes during those recoveries.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that there's another episode I have that I'm editing right now about eye health. And my first episode of this show was around oral health, and both of those medical professionals, and they talked about how oral health is an indicator of your overall health. And then I learned how eye health is an indicator of your overall health. And then with your skin, everyone thinks about it as like very cosmetic, like, oh, I got wrinkles, oh, I got this or that. But really, it's the largest organ in your body. And so the thing is that a lot of people think about it from a cosmetic perspective. I mean, look, when we were all younger, we tan, we went on spring break, whatever it is, particularly those of us who went to college in like bumfuck upstate New York. Whenever the sun came out, we would sit there and be like this. That's a lot of very good things for the skin. So I think that thinking about skin on a larger level as it relates to our health is a good discussion to have. This is also a good time to indicate also that Lisa is not a doctor. This is not meant to be medical advice. Before you begin any type of regimen, you should always check with your doctor to make sure that it's kosher, particularly if you're on specific medications, to ensure any type of interaction risk that you need to keep in mind. And so with that in mind, actually, I think that's a good segue into supplements and diet, right? So, you're talking about what you're putting on your skin, but then look, the supplements market, particularly for women over 40, is predatory.
Oh
And
my word. By the
it's
way, I think that's the next frontier that is going to start seeing some, and I hope start seeing some regulation. Sorry to interrupt, but there is zero regulation, just like the
there's zero.
industry, no regulation. Take a
Yeah.
look at any one of your vitamins. FDA did not approve this. You can basically put anything onto the label and then only have to take it off the shelf, maybe if someone complains, which is the
Yeah. So
same
for those
scale.
of you who don't know, there's a really great website that I found out about called consumerlab.com.
Ooh.
And it is a subscription website, but you could actually get it for free through your public library. So for example, I'm based in Seattle, and so through the Seattle Public Library, you get your library card. And what Consumer Lab does is that it tests the supplements out there. So if you are looking for a vitamin D supplement, which living in Seattle, I need to take a vitamin D supplement. I went on there and they basically rank from top to bottom which supplements actually have the most vitamin D in them and which ones have the least. And they talk about like, because there is no regulation around them. Anybody could say anything about it. And so I'm not as optimistic as you that it's going to get regulated. There's too much lobbying involved in that, to be honest with you. And there's way too much money at stake.
Well,
But the
same with
thing is
skincare.
that,
Yeah.
but what I do tell people, what I tell clients of mine to protect themselves is to get educated and to go look at Consumer Lab and go see if you need to take a supplement, see which ones have been tested to have the most of, vitamin D if you're taking vitamin D. And, that actually leads to a question that came in when I was like hitting people up for questions around collagen,
Mhm.
right? So you could go online to this website and you can look up like a collagen supplement and you can find out which ones actually are good, what the research says in terms of their effect, in terms of its effectiveness for you. Do you want a powder? Do you want a beverage? Is it better to just do beef broth, some kind of bone broth type of thing? But Indy, what do you like when you're thinking about stuff like supplements or collagen in particular? What have you heard about collagen for like your skin?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is you're caught like just like anything, just like squalene, CoQ10, everything. As you get older, the production of it starts to decrease. But I think the important thing is knowing number one, any contraindications, and number two, for any supplements that you're going to take, because there can be contraindications even with collagen. But oftentimes, much like if you take turmeric, unless you're putting pepper or chili peppers in, you're not activating it. I believe with collagen, you actually really need to take a vitamin C supplement too in order for it to be absorbed more readily into your skin when you're taking it orally, which they don't tell you because they don't say anything. But that was something that really interesting that I had no idea about. And here I am taking like vital proteins in my coffee, etc. And I'm realizing, oh, I don't take a vitamin C supplement. So I don't know how much good it was doing or has been doing for me because I wasn't taking it. And because there's no one you really can talk to about it either. It's not like it's on any of these websites. If you're taking this, take this. The other thing you should be careful of, even with the collagen, etc., is depending on the delivery, how is it being delivered? Meaning, is it time release? What is it encapsulated in? Because oftentimes some of these supplements, by the time it gets to your stomach where you're hoping it being absorbed, it's already gone. Like it doesn't even reach your stomach in the form that you're supposed to have it. So you need to take a look at that. And you also need to take a look at your supplements and see what else is in there. I went down a dark rabbit hole last night with just magnesium. My doctor said, "Oh, you need."
Oh, that's bad. There's so many. First of all, there's so many versions of magnesium, and then there's so much. Like with that, all supplements, there's so much ripe for misinformation and fraud. Like magnesium,
absolutely,
is
it's
you could spend like a year researching magnesium and not even get it because there's literally like all these different types of magnesium.
Oh yeah, I was taking the wrong supplement, had no idea, and I consider myself relatively educated on this area, but was taking completely the wrong supplement. And then when I went to go buy a regular one, like magnesium oxide, 400 milligrams, just not having seed oils in there and various different potentially toxic other ingredients in there in the delivery method. So you just have, again, like with skincare, you have to read the ingredients, but make sure when you're taking collagen, look at where it's from, right? What it's derived from. Make sure, just like Jill said, you're buying it from a reputable source. And I hate to say it, just because it was reputable, if it has been purchased by a big company, doesn't mean that the ingredient level is still the same. And so it might not be what you used to think it was. So unfortunately, we have to do our own due diligence on that. But I am a big proponent of taking collagen orally. Same thing with CoQ10, really important for the antioxidants as well. Great for heart health, great for your skin as well. But just make sure you're taking it with the whatever. I was going to say companion plant. I love to garden, if you can tell, but it's not like what other companion vitamin for whatever supplement you're taking. So that is actually doing what you need to. And if like you're taking turmeric, fantastic for your skin, fantastic for inflammation. But unless you're taking it with chili pepper, it's not being activated.
I mean, the main thing that I would say for anybody whether it's this group here or listening after, is that with supplements, you definitely just need to talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
Right. And even, there's like the Western Eastern medicine thing. The problem is that if you are so my husband is on anti-seizure medication. So there's not enough testing out there that shows that your average supplement doesn't impact his anti-seizure medication. So if you are on what I call life-saving medication, right, you need to find out what those interactions are. And I guarantee that they probably have not been tested well enough to know what that is. So it's very much a buyer beware type of thing. But I think the ingredient thing is really another segue, because, you have this retinol alternative product, Indy.
Yep.
Now, there's a lot out there in terms of retinol versus non-retinol.
Yep.
Right. And I think that maybe a good primer on what retinol does and why you have an actual alternative as opposed to the actual retinol. Like you made a business and a product decision to do that.
Absolutely.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure, 100%. First of all, the important thing with retinols is it helps promote cell turnover and it stimulates collagen production. The thing with retinol is you need to make sure, if you are using it, that you are gradually introducing it to your skincare routine. That said, you need to be very careful. Retinol, tretinoin, and vitamin A can be very irritating to people's skin, especially if you have sensitive skin. I am one of those people. I desperately wanted, obviously, I'm 52 years old, to be 53 this month. I want something that's going to address the signs of aging. I'm very pro-aging. If you're not aging, you're dead. I'm all for aging. That doesn't mean I want to look like the crypt keeper either. So I wanted the benefits of retinol. When I tried to use a retinol, skin irritation would be a mild description of what happened to my skin. And that's when I realized how many people were actually sensitive. So I found that Rambutan, when used over time, had the same benefits of a traditional retinol with none of the drawbacks. So you won't have the sun sensitivity or the skin irritation. So I found a way to use a botanical ingredient. Many people use bakuchiol. I still find that it can be still somewhat irritating depending on how sensitive your skin is. By the way, I don't have sensitive skin, but I do have sensitivity to retinol. And I think that's a really also big disclaimer. There is a significant difference between sensitive skin, true sensitive skin, and skin that has developed sensitivity over time. If you were born with sensitive skin, out of the womb, you have sensitive skin, then you, in fact, have sensitive skin. If in your 30s, 20s, you started to realize you get a little sensitivity to an ingredient, you don't have sensitive skin, you have sensitivity to ingredients, which can happen over time, and it can happen on an ingredient by ingredient basis. So I always say that people will say, I have sensitive skin. I'm like, do you though? What did you have it? Oh, in my 30s. Nope, you don't have sensitive skin. There's an ingredient that is not agreeing with you. So I was able to use ingredients like Paracress and Rambutan that are very nourishing to the skin, but over time has clinically been proven to have the same benefits of a traditional retinol without any of the benefits, without any of the side effects. That said, just because it doesn't have sun sensitivity does not mean you're not wearing SPF. I always say that as a disclaimer, just because that's a big thing. Photosensitivity with retinol is a huge issue where people go out after using a traditional retinol and not using strong enough sunscreen and are not reapplying it, and then they cause damage to their skin. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't, even though that you won't have the same issues with a traditional retinol. I'm just saying that isn't a thing. So like our retinol alternative is actually a moisturizer that you can use day and night, as traditional retinols you would only use at night. Same with exfoliation. If you are somebody exfoliates, and I'm a huge advocate of non-abrasive exfoliation, because if you're anything like me, if a little is good, then more is going to be even better. And what happens is people use, say, knives and things like that, and they basically scrub their face away, and they do damage to their skin. So I always say a gentle fruit exfoliant is a better, like an AHA from fruit is always much better. So exfoliating is also done at night because of photosensitivity.
What is, if you have like 5 to 10 minutes, right?
Mhm.
What are the 3 products that you need to like take care of yourself?
If you say you only have 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you a critical question. When you get into bed, do you ever like have to go to the bathroom? You have to go do all those things. You have more than 5 minutes. And the reason I'm saying this is not because you should slather on products or anything like that. And I know we're going to go into this more, Jill, but I think the most important thing is taking that time for yourself. Trust me, 10 minutes, an extra 5 minutes to give yourself 10 minutes is going to make the biggest difference in your life up here and in here. Because as parents, I have a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old. So I know you're going, and you give and you give and you give. And I don't know about you, but growing, like when I was raising the kids, the only time I had to myself was in the bathroom when I got to lock the door. Now, I am not saying if you guys have infants at home, you should leave your infant and go into the bathroom and take care of like your whole skincare regimen while there's an infant. I'm just saying if you have older kids, they can handle themselves so that you can take the time for yourself. And I know we're going to go into the micro habits, Jill, because I do think that setting the tone for your evening is one of the most important steps that you can take for your mental and overall health. Now, to answer the question, what products would I use if I only had a few minutes to do it? Number 1, cleanse your face. I don't care if you wear makeup or not. That is one of the most important steps, because if you are not removing wherever you live from your face, it is just sitting there, and anything you use afterwards is not going to do a darn thing. So you're going to remove your makeup and the remains of the day from your skin. Use something gentle, non-stripping. Most cleansers these days are pH balanced, which is why a toner can be, to some, even though I swear by ours, can be kind of just an extra step, but there are benefits to it. But the first benefit for the toner used to be to make sure that you're balancing your skin after using a very harsh cleanser. I'm proud to say all of our cleansers are pH balanced, so you don't have to worry about doing any damage. But I would say cleansing your skin is the most important, one of the most important steps that you can do. By the way, waxing on, waxing off, and then rinsing is not cleansing your skin. You need to take your cleanser, 1 or 2 pumps, and massage it in. I mean, I want you to get in there, give yourself a little lymphatic drain in here, into the nasal fold, up in here. Really cleanse your skin. So much so that you don't need to necessarily cleanse it at night. Look at that. I gave you a few extra moments in the morning back because you're doing such a great job at cleansing your skin at night. And I think that's really important because as we age, we're not producing as much oil. We're not, all that stuff that makes our skin look so radiant and healthy and plump is not being produced as much as we get older and go through the various stages of menopause. And so if you don't have to cleanse your skin in the morning because you did such a great job at night, that's a bonus there. So what you would do is use a good toner, like our CoQ10 toner. She swears by it. Apparently, so does everybody because we sell millions of them. But that's a great alternative to spray onto a cotton pad to swipe your face to remove any excess sebum. That's the important thing. But if you're in the shower, you're probably going and doing that. So cleanse. The next thing I would say, toner, exfoliate at night. The reason why I'm such a proponent of that is because Your skin cells turn over every 28 to 32 days, depending on hereditary age, etc. And you want to make sure that you are exfoliating that dead skin cell from your skin, and that way your serums, your moisturizers, etc., can do the jobs you want it to. So, and it also, if you're not removing it, your skin has some texture to it. It's not as light reflective. By the way, more light reflective skin is younger looking skin. So there's so many benefits. I just saw something. How long do we massage and leave on the cleanser before rinsing? It depends on your cleanser. I go in there and I make sure that all my eye makeup is removed. I don't wear foundation, but I do like wearing mascara and I do like wearing eye makeup, although it doesn't ever really show on social on the film. And it's after hours, so I'm not wearing red lip, but I do like a good red lip. So I make sure all that's removed. Now, I probably massage my skin for about 3 or 4 minutes because I'm really going in. Double cleansing is great. It's not necessary. I happen to have access to like all these products, so of course, and that's my business. So of course, I'm doing it. But it's not where when people say you have to double cleanse, you don't have to double cleanse. What you have to do is cleanse enough to make sure you're removing all the makeup and anything from your skin. So you're probably going, well, how do I know if I did it? That is a great question. You could take something like our CoQ10 toner or any toner that you want. You spray it onto a cotton pad and you swipe it across your face. If your cotton pad still has dirt on it, that's a good indication that you're not doing a great job. So it takes a little practice and you start to know, but I would say 3 or 4 minutes is a great idea, but really, really massage it in there to break down whatever you're using. The important thing is really taking a look and seeing what is in the ingredient list. So you want to make sure that it has none of the toxic, like the dirty dozen, as we used to call them. There's no alcohol, nothing really abrasive in it. Listen, if you're not using my product, I would say look on Credo's website. Credo is a clean retailer, or Aaliyah's website. I think she probably has even stricter standards, who is in Denver.
And we'll get the links to all these places for anyone who doesn't know. We'll get the links.
Yes, absolutely. You're in good hands. Even Blue Mercury, if you go and say like a clean cleanser, they'll be able to point you there. I would say you have to know.
What's the third thing? You said
so cleanse, you're exfoliating, and then moisturizer. So there's a big difference between serums and moisturizers. Yes, I'm a proponent of serums. Serums have the actives. I always say serums address an issue or concern. A moisturizer is bringing moisture to your skin. There's a big difference between something that's hydrating and something that's moisturizing. Hydrating has to do with water. Moisturizing has to do with fat, like lipids, oil. Now you're saying, but I have oily skin. Although if you're older, you probably don't have oily skin anymore. But by the way, if you do, oil is great for oily skin. If you don't use oils in your moisturizer, you're just not getting the important fat and oils that you need for those building chains for your skin. So I'm a big proponent of making sure that you're using something with oils, not comedogenic.
You brought up like using something like oil or water-based and everything. So one question came in is that, are there certain products that work better with foundation than others? Yes. Right? So that you don't maybe have as much of like the shiny face thing going on. Like, how can people tell what would work better with their foundation or with any foundation applied versus not?
It really depends, obviously, foundation to foundation. I would say the biggest issue is often related to the pH level of what your skin already is at, and then what you're using on top of your skin in terms of any serums or moisturizers. So depending on that, sometimes you'll get what we call is either a soaping effect or a pilling effect. I'm sure you guys have experienced like when you put a moisturizer on or your foundation, it's like almost like white. You're like, wait, what's going on? It gets a little soapy. And that has to do with pH balance. And that is just a formulation issue. Not even an issue, just compatibility between brands, between your skin, etc. I would say the most important thing that if you find that you have oily skin and you're concerned about the foundation you're wearing, a primer is going to be your best friend. And you want to use a primer that has a little bit of a texture to it so that your foundation kind of holds on to it. Whether you're using, like we have our SPF is a primer as well. So you'll notice it goes on beautiful, dewy, etc. but your foundation holds on to it. Same thing with the color balancer and things like that. So I would recommend, if you are concerned about how do you finish up your skincare routine and then put on a foundation, I would say a primer is a great next in between step to make sure that your foundation lasts and will be compatible. I think that answers the question.
So I think it does. I mean, look, there are so many different products out there. It's kind of hard to say, but I think what you're doing is, what I like to say is, like, you're giving people a rubric that they could go to a store and they can ask that question, and they can obviously look online, because any reputable brand is going to have that information on their website around.
Anybody can always, by the way, ladies, you can DM me. My personal Instagram is my name, Indy Lee, and say, hey, this is the foundation I use. I have XY skin. Can you recommend a clean swap? I'm happy to do that. I don't have makeup or anything like that, but I'm happy to tell you the brands that I know that work really well with various different types of skin. As we get older, the makeup we're going to use is going to change because our skin is changing. So I'm happy to always address.
So who has questions here? I know there's questions in this group. All right, Jillian, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you so much, Indy. I mean, this is great. I am all about clean beauty. I check everything. I want to understand, like, what your thoughts are on EWG's Skin Deep, because I go there for everything. And I think my daughter, who's like into the teen scene with makeup, is like, Mom, does it all have to have like under a 2? Like,
and the answer is yes. No. Yes.
And that, so one, I'd love to get your thoughts on things to look for there. And then 2, I actually hadn't heard of your makeup brand, and I was so excited when Jill had this session, because I was trying to find better clean beauty. I had used Beauty Counter in the past, just because a friend of mine sold it.
Yeah, listen, great brand.
Yeah, and now there's pretty much non-existent. And I also had noticed, like, my skin has changed a little over time, and I have dark circles. I have to think some of it might be genetic. And Jill knows my story. My mom died of cancer when she was 54. So I am super, super conscious of everything I put on my body. So, one, I just want to say I appreciate your story so much, and it resonates with me. And I think the advocacy and the work that you're doing around clean beauty is fantastic.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing your story.
Oh my God, no, my pleasure. So, okay, EWG, a great starting point, but I think it's important.
What is EWG for people who don't know?
Environmental Working Group. Here's what you need to remember. It is a lobby. In order to be rated and in order to be included in their EWG, you have to spend significant money.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
So it's a great starting point. By the way, it is one of where I start too.
Okay.
But again, it also depends on where a product is being and ingredients being sourced. So they're how would they ever know? No one's ever going to give up their sources. So where is it being sourced? The percentage that is being used of that ingredient as well. So for example, AHA, right? You can get, an AHA from synthetically, or you can get it from like caviar lines and things like that. Or, salicylic acid can be from, the same bark that you're getting, like a willow tree, you can get it from, you can get it from mint. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can get various different things from. So I think it's important that you know where it's being sourced. And by the way, brands should be able to tell you. They're probably not going to tell you exactly where, but I can tell you that, our AHA in the exfoliating solution is from caviar lime. I know that our salicylic is from the willow bark oftentimes, or it can be from wintergreen. So depending on the product. So you can get squalane. It can be from shark liver. We never use that. We're leaping bunny cruelty free, but you can also get it from sugarcane, or you can get it from olive. So there's so many different things. And so I think that the generalization that happens, that this is either good or bad, there's a lot of gray in between. So just know that whenever you're looking at any of these sites. The other thing is, most brands are not going to give over their formula. So they do not know, right? No one's ever asked me about, okay, well, how am I putting this in? Oh my God, hi, Jared. So no one ever, you're not really sure. So I would say another great alternative after you've kind of done that first is taking a look at Yuka is a great app as well. Again, none of these apps ever come to me and say, hey, can you give me your formula percentages? But I think it's important that you look at these different things and don't look at it and realize, oh, why, how is it happening? Like, where are they getting their information? They're taking basically your ingredient list, the INCI list, which is the International Nomenclature for Cosmetic Ingredients. It's basically usually the Latin name. And they're making a guess and they're giving a generalization. So these are all generalized. Now, that said, pretty much if your coal tar is there, I don't really care where it's being manufactured, that doesn't belong, or, PFAS, forever chemicals, again, still bad. I'm not saying there's like a spectrum of the bad guys, but I think on certain things it's important to know. And most of these apps, they're just going off of what's on your ingredient list. The other thing to know is that oftentimes, and brands don't have to let you know, ingredient lists change over time. Perfect example, Burt's Bees. Was they bought by Clorox? Not every product, but a lot of their products changed. Aveda. Horst who was the person who started Aveda, was probably one of the, I think he's probably one of the first of the clean beauty. He's a legend, and it was ultra pure. Then it got bought by, Estee Lauder. Very different ingredient list. And it's the same in food. I'm sure some of you saw Siete just got bought out by Pepsi. So now those chips, who knows what's going to happen? And listen, we get it. It's about money, etc. But unless you're informed, you just don't know to look at it. So it's very hard. And that's why whenever anybody says, oh, Think Dirty. Okay, well, Think Dirty called me out for using salicylic acid that was wintergreen derived. You also didn't know that I was using it at such a low percentage. So you're going to tell me that it was a dirty product. Again, they're like, oh, well, will you give us your ingredient, like your list and your entire formulation? No, I will not give you my formulation. Well, if you pay us to be a part of Think Dirty. So again, that's how brands, I understand these apps need to monetize, but you need to know the background of these.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It sounds like a mafia hit racket. What you just described, that sounds like extortion and like pay me protection money. That's literally what you just described.
It's kind of crazy. And I always get the, hey, do you want to be a part of this list? I'm like, no, I do not. But again, they're fantastic starting blocks. I think the best thing that you can do is go to a Credo or an Aaliyah or a Detox Market and take a look at what brands they carry. And then you can feel pretty good, because everybody's definition of clean is different. It varies by every retailer, and it is not a regulated word. When I first started, we used the word natural, and then we said, okay, well, natural isn't right because there's natural and naturally derived. So what's the difference? A banana. If you had bananas mashed in a jar, that's natural. If you heated that banana up and sauteed it, even if you didn't add any other ingredient to it, it molecularly changed, and now it's naturally derived. So differences, nuances, etc., zero regulation. It is getting better, I will say, with the introduction of MOCRA, which is the Modernization of Cosmetic Regulation Act. And so if you, as a brand, make over $1 million, you need to have every product registered. And this is the FDA's attempt at trying to get some standardization and get some control of what's going on over there, because it's the Wild West. Anybody can put anything in the bottle, and as long as even if, I'm not saying this is happening, but even if they wrote gasoline, and as long as it's labeled with the right font size, you're good to go. So it's one of those. Obviously that's not what's really happening, but I think you get my gist. Okay, so that's the EWG. The other question was
like for dark circles and like what you were, I'm 44. Like, how do I work on
Number one, love yourself. Only, I will tell you, you're probably the person who sees it and tears it apart the most. That said, dark circles is going to make it what's going on is genetics. is a big part of it. Sorry, it's true. Another is hydration, your water intake, and your sleep. And I'm going to bring Jill into the sleep one in a second. But hydration is really important. So I know this is not going to be popular. Wine is not hydrating. I'm just going to say it. Any alcohol, not hydrating. Coffee, not hydrating. Right? So if you're like, well, I had my 2 cups of coffee and then I had, this and I had iced tea and no. Like water, seltzer, lemon in your water. Like I get it. I hate the taste of just regular water. It's not something where I always have to put like a little bit of fruit in there. So that's a big part of it too, is hydration. Most people say, I'm hydrated. I'm totally hydrated. To which I will say, if you go to the bathroom and you pee and it is clear, then yes, you are hydrated. If you go to the bathroom and it is not clear, let's re-examine what you're really drinking in a day. And by the way, it's not just what you're drinking. It's also like if you're having fruits and vegetables and stuff like this, obviously that plays a role too. But so what would I suggest that someone does if they have dark circles? There are some phenomenal concealers out there. So concealer is going to be your friend. Like, but there are certain things. Like we have our Eye Awaken Eye Serum. It doesn't use caffeine. It uses arnica. As you know, arnica is really great on black and blues and wounds and stuff like that. So that's why we used it, because caffeine is a quick fix. It's a vasoconstrictor, but over time, arnica will work longer, better, etc. So we use arnica and spirulina. So I would say the Eye Awaken Eye Serum. But again, I don't want to sell you a product when it might be genetic and you might be really tired and stressed, and maybe the coffee and then the evening glass of wine might not be helping it either. Not a judgment, just a fact that will impact it. So I would say making sure that you're keeping that really hydrated under your eyes, like topically hydrated, moisturized too. So using a serum and a moisturizer around your eyes is a great addition. And then use a really good concealer for those who are, let's call us more mature and wiser, because there is a difference between various different formulations. I have been trying them all out. I will tell you, I just tried a new one this past week, which I'm really loving and is working and does not seem to crease in our wrinkles and then make us look even older. So there's a brand called Ritual Defee, Fille. It is sold at Credo. I believe it's sold at Detox Market. It's really great
We'll link to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a question that came in just related, and then I think there was another question that came in. But how long does it take if, like, let's say Jillian used one of these products you recommended? How long does that is it realistic to expect it to take? Great
question. I always tell people 3 to 4 weeks of consistent use. The reason is because your cell turnover has to happen, and you've got to get these new skin cells that are seeing the new ingredients, etc. So anybody who says that also it's going to wipe away your anything in a day, the only thing that I know that's going to address wrinkles in a day is filler and Botox. That's it. You're not going to be able to topically put something in. You might see some plumping right away from hyaluronic acid. So it's binding moisture and plumping it. So the appearance of the fine lines, you're going to see decreasing almost immediately. But truly, it takes anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks to see a difference. Great question. Also, what clean mascara do you recommend? Oh, get your pencils out. My God. Okay. Swede, SWEED, is fantastic. I would say Mob Beauty, MOB, is also really good. Tok, TOK, has a great mascara too. I will tell you, I've probably tried every mascara on the market, because that's clean mascara on the market, because I have a little bit of oily underneath here. And so halfway during the day, any dark circles, I look like a raccoon. And that's fine. I like Rocky the raccoon. I just don't want to look like him. So I really like Swede. Really. Their Cloud mascara, the Cloud one, is phenomenal. And on my Instagram, like personal, there's a link and you can see like I put whatever I use up there and that I'm loving, and I edit it often because again, ingredients change.
No questions from me. I just love your stuff. I met you right before, I think your surgery this year. And I've been using, especially the CoQ10, addicted to it. And it's great. And I just love your product. It's made a difference, I can tell. So,
Thank
I hope
you.
I'm not the nerd that wore like the band.
No, I love you for it. You kidding?
No, I love that. That's great. This question actually, I thought was an interesting question that came in. And it came in from, it actually happens to be our current house guests. And they live in Arizona and they're very avid golfers. And so they wear the hats and they wear sunscreen also, but they're trying to find a sunscreen that doesn't get into their eyes and burn. And so do you have any advice on ingredients to avoid in a sunscreen that they can wear
Yes.
that won't burn their eyes? And I know I've experienced that too when I've hiked and everything else.
I absolutely, and I'm so happy here that they're wearing sunscreen, although anybody who lives out there, duh. I think you really need to look for a mineral sunscreen. I think you're not going to find any, I mean, given what you are looking for your sunscreen to do, most sunscreens are not ophthalmologically tested. That said, again, it's hard because everybody's eye, like what's going to irritate me is going to be different, but I would look for a super clean, make sure it is waterproof to some extent, although you got to do it every 2 hours regardless. I would say it's really hard. I would say once they put their sunscreen on, the best thing that they can do is take a powder and just brush the powder to set it. So that might help the running a little bit. But
you mean like a baby powder, or do you mean like something like?
You did not just say that to me.
I don't know. Hey, I thought you said you weren't judging.
I'll judge you. Like you can even use arrowroot or cornstarch or anything like that, or pressed powder. But I would just make sure that you're trying to set it with powder. But it's just going to happen because the stuff that's going to stay put has a lot of nasty stuff in it. So it's kind of like the give and the take. And so that's why I would say using something like that would be good. Also, they have a lot of really cool hats now that have like literally like what Maggie's wearing, like almost like a sweatband right in there. Like that's another great option. Also pulling your hair back, because what usually happens is the sweat gets caught in the hair and then it drips in. So putting your hair back, those things.
They do that. They definitely pull their hair back when they're golfing and everything. Yeah. I think they were just trying to figure out like, hey, they're golfing in Arizona.
Yeah, you're going to sweat.
Sun is out. You're going to sweat, but is there a way they can kind of mitigate the burning eyes?
A little bit of powder goes a long way just to set.
Okay.
I never would have thought of that. That's brilliant. Like just putting the setting powder, especially like up in here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And take some with them. Like, they're sweating. What's really amazing, and I think it might be Supergoop, I could be wrong, has, and they're not like the cleanest of the clean, but they're okay.
They can go to Credo though, to your point. They can go to a Credo and say like, hey, I need a powder to kind of keep my sunscreen from not bleeding down.
Absolutely. But there are some sunscreens out there that are like a powder form, like it's in a brush. And once you take the brush and then you can go like this, so you're reapplying sunscreen, but it's in a powder form. That's also really great.
Wow.
Yeah. So if they're living in Arizona, do they live anywhere near Phoenix?
Yeah, they're in a suburb, but they're near Scottsdale. So they can
great. So Citrine is where they should be going to shop, which is a clean beauty destination in Arizona. Melissa's phenomenal. She's really great about her ingredients. Another Spoonie has rheumatoid arthritis. And that's sort of where she started the clean journey, but she has really great standards. So I'd say for her, Citrine. Okay, great. And the answer, I saw a question. Someone asked, do I have to apply sunscreen when you're indoors? Absolutely.
Did that Monday myth last week on Instagram?
Yes, there is truth to blue light and what it does to your skin as well. So sunscreen is really important, no matter what.
And so, Jerry, even in the room that I'm in, it has like a lot of windows, as you could probably tell. And it's like I'm still getting exposure from the sun, even though I'm not going outside. And so like I wear sunscreen as part of like my daily routine. just, to make sure that I'm protecting
Yeah.
my skin. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That is a big one. I can't say that I'm fantastic about reapplying my sunscreen every 2 hours. I'm not. I should be better. I know that. That said, I don't wear foundation anymore. I use our daily SPF primer, and that's an SPF 40. So it's totally fine to reapply during the day because it's not like I'm moving my but people get all made up and what are they going to do? Reapply this? And so that's part of it. One of the things I really want to do is try to figure out a way to come out with a really good mist sunscreen that is clean so that we can reapply and making it easier. Not so easy to do, by the way, but trying to figure out how to do it. But I saw that question. I thought that was a really, really important one. One of the questions, can I ask a question?
You can ask a question. I think you're the main guest star that everybody was excited to tune into, but go ahead and ask a question. Okay, well, it was for you because one of the things that so this is a burnout question because guess what? I do have that too. I get that. What is one of the best ways to reset? Not like as in like you're pressing the reset, but reset and establish boundaries if you're already in an existing relationship, whether it be at work, etc., friends. But say you're at work and you're like, all right, I did not set proper boundaries. Any suggestions on how you can reestablish boundaries that are safe for your own mental health? So I'm a burnout coach, just for context. And a lot of what I tell people is that you have to rip the Band-Aid off and you have to just lay the groundwork and say look, I know that we used to have 5:00 meetings, for an example, but right now, I'm at a point where I need to, be walking out the door at 5:00. And the thing is that I actually tell my clients that they shouldn't need to justify why they need to walk out the door at 5:00. I think that gives power to that person that they shouldn't have. I think that you are the boss of you. And I always joke, be the boss of you. And I think the thing is that being able to say, look, I know what work I have to get done. I know, and in tech right now where I live in Seattle, there's a lot of return to office type of stuff happening. And it's not going well amongst the women over 40 for a lot of good reasons. But I still think that saying look, I'm here doing my job. I'm here during working hours, but at 5:00, I need to leave. And I think the best way to do that is to just be clear about the expectation around this is my requirement, but also be clear on here's the work I need to get done. Now, if your boss is hey, we have a standing 5:00 meeting that we all go to, then we have to figure out something's gonna have to give, right? But I'm not a proponent of telling your boss why. And because I feel that it's not necessary. And so say for the people who are childless, like me, I don't feel that anyone's time is worth more than anybody else's, right? Whether you have kids or not. And so I think it's really important for you to just own that and say, this is what I need to be doing. I need to leave at 5. I know what I need to get done. If somehow my work is not getting done, then let's talk about that. But generally, I find that's not the case in 99.99% of these situations. But you just have to do it. You have to rip the Band-Aid off. And you just need to establish it and establish what your working hours are. And that doesn't also mean, by the way, as a burnout coach, what used to happen is that people would sign off at 5. Then they'd go have dinner with their families, and then they'd be online until 2:00 in the morning, responding to emails. I don't think that that's the answer to,
I'm hiding because that's me.
Yeah. I don't think that that's necessarily the answer either. I think that a lot of this comes down to ruthless prioritization and thinking about what is it that I have to get done, right, over the course of a given week. And, Jillian and I have actually talked about this, and a lot of what I recommend is that if you do your weekly goal setting, let's say you take Sunday night and you do goal setting, or even you do Friday afternoon. Let's say the weekends, you don't have time to do your goal setting for work. Let's say Friday afternoon, before you shut off, you're here are my goals for next week. Look at your calendar and see how much of your time is time blocked, whether it's in meetings or in work time, towards those goals. You'd be surprised at how much of a calendar can get allocated to activities that are not allocated to your goals. Now, I'm not talking about if you have to like pick up your kids somewhere or do stuff around the house. You know, obviously no one has a goal, you know, around that stuff.
Right.
That's stuff that you have to do. But I think the thing is that being really thoughtful about the goals that you set and how you spend the time to achieve those goals and figuring out what's the delta there. I think that's a very impactful exercise that a lot of people don't spend enough time doing. And I think that people would find they'd have more time to do the things that they want if they took the time to look at that.
Yeah, I agree. That's really great advice. Another thing you had told me, which I really loved when it relates to burnout, and this for me is something that I've looked at somebody who, and I mean, Jerry, you know, from my Instagram and everything that I've gone through, obviously from health purposes, and really taken a look and said, what was I doing? I was working so much. I didn't realize I had no idea until this June how sick I actually was. And the time it took me to start to heal, because I mean, as Jill knows, I was in and out of the hospital for a month, and it had nothing to do. My brain surgery was a success. It was the healing, and it was all stress. And I think it was because I wasn't putting proper boundaries. I don't think I know was that. Another thing that I loved is that you always say, you know, when you create the space, that doesn't mean that you have to fill it back in. Because I always felt that if I wasn't being productive and I wasn't doing something and I wasn't moving this forward or posting or liking or blah, 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 I was not
Yeah. Well, it's part of the
like
hustle.
productive. That's what.
It's part of the hustle culture, and a lot of that, you know, so with 10 years, you know, working for an investment bank and then 20 working in tech, if you're not busy, then you must not be important or working on something.
Right. That's exactly.
And I think that, you know, now I'm on the flip side of that. I'm like a complete 180 where it's just be really ruthless in your prioritization. So next week, well, no, actually tomorrow I had a little editorial switch. Tomorrow there's a post coming out on my blog that's going to talk about the return to office culture and this debate I got into with a bunch of men, well-intentioned men, about how RTO affects women. And I kind of gave like a different spin on it in terms of this is how it affects women. And what I told them was that before COVID, when everybody was mostly in the office anyway, I said the most productive people I knew were actually the working moms, because they were absolutely fucking ruthless with their time. Like when pickup time happened, it's like, yeah, I got no time for you. I'm out of here.
Absolutely.
Right.
I moved mountains to make sure that.
But I mean, but that's the thing, like working moms were by far the most productive people, but then it put them also at a disadvantage because they didn't have time for the breakfast. They didn't have time for the golf outings. They didn't have time to go out for drinks. They were there to go and get the job done. They didn't have time for small talk during the day. And so as a result, they weren't considered like promotion material because no one really had the time to get to know them because they were there to work and then GTFO to take care of their responsibilities as parents.
Yep.
And so I think that when you're talking about women, burnout, going through perimenopause, and if you're dealing with autoimmune on top of that, you're just like, I just don't have time.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I'm thinking about the, what is it? The David, the main character from Schitt's Creek, David.
Ooh.
And there's this GIF where he's like, it's just too much. But that's like what a lot of, I felt like when I was in corporate, women in their 40s are dealing with is that they're dealing with all of these things. Yeah. And no one is giving them grace. Everybody wants a piece of them. And they need the space to actually think so that they could take care of themselves.
That's, I think, one of the biggest things. And I know this went from skincare to more burnout, but I mean, hey, listen, I'm taking advantage of Jill. But because I do think that so much of your skin's health and your overall health has to do with stress. I mean, again, I think stress is one of the biggest killers of all of it. I mean, and then let's put menopause, peri, post, all those things, where your body and your hormones are changing, etc. But one of the biggest things that I realized is that I wasn't prioritizing empty space as productive. Right, like as somebody who's also creative, etc. Because I came from also the accounting mentality, like, I got to make sure all the figures are adding up and all those things. I wasn't creating time to be completely creative and have that open space. And when you and I had that conversation in the car ride, Jill, on the way to the airport, that really resonated for me about when you create some space. That doesn't mean you have to fill it in, and that doesn't mean you're not being productive. Productivity does not mean that you are actually typing something up or writing something down, etc. And I think there has to be a mindset shift, because I feel like, especially in corporate America, it's still not there. Like, well, I can't be on and then be able to shift like that.
Well, I think the single most impactful thing that people can do in their day, because you wake up and you have a plan, and then life happens, right? And so what I always tell my clients is that here is one part of the day. This is the most important part of your day, and it's not breakfast. It is your wind down routine.
Absolutely.
So let's say you had a plan and everything went to hell for whatever reason, whether it was work, personal, or all the above. And that's like on most days, but some days it's excessive. And like, what just happened today?
That's my everyday.
Like, what? WTF, right?
Yep.
And so what I try and do is, a lot of times we're all in this thing where we're on our phones all the time, and maybe we're even in bed and we're scrolling and stuff, and we think that that's relaxing.
I totally feel seen on this one.
So, but the thing is that, and I'm not here to judge, but what I am going to say though is that your brain, whether you're working at your laptop, you're doom scrolling current events, you're on Facebook, like whatever it is, your brain is going like 70 to 80 miles an hour. I want you to think about that. Now think about, like, you're in your car.
So good. She was telling me this. I have not stopped thinking about this since I
and you're trying to like go to sleep. But in this case, you're in your car and you're slamming on the brakes to go to like basically stop, or at least go to like 10 miles an hour so you don't rear end like the slow moving traffic that you just ran into. That is not good for your brakes. So now try doing that with your brain, where you're like, okay, I'm like, okay, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to go to bed now. Your brain is not going to function like that. It is not going to go down. And so the thing that you need to do is figure out how you could bring, instead of going down like that, you're trying to go, right? So if you're trying to go to bed at 10, you want to think about, how are you calming your mind starting at 8:30? That doesn't mean you start it right then, but like, how are you calming your mind? No joke, my skincare routine in the evening, that is part of my calming thing, right? That's like, between brushing.
The micro habit.
Yeah. Between brushing my teeth and washing my face and flossing and all the things. That's
I know she spends an hour brushing her teeth. This is a lot. This is why she has such good teeth.
That would be the orthodontic work that my parents paid for. But the thing is that you want to figure out, what is that routine that's going to get you to go down a few pips gently, so that this way, by the time it's 10 o'clock, your body and your brain is in a position to sleep, because sleep is hard right now for us. It is hard. Let's just like admit that.
By the way, number one beauty tip is sleep. Number one. That's why they call beauty sleep.
Sleep is hard right now for a lot of things we don't have control over. And it's,
by the way, my bedtime reminder just came on. It says
we're gonna
bedtime is no, please. But it's so funny you said that. My wind down is starting time, because my bedtime is set for 10:05, and I get a reminder on my watch.
Right. See, that's good. So, but the thing is that what I'm going to try and challenge people to do is find something that helps calm you down before sleep. And if you can't do an hour before because you're in the middle of the crazy, start with a half hour, right? See if that at least helps. I will say this, I used to make wine. I enjoy my wine, so I'm not going to sit there and say I don't drink wine. But I definitely notice a difference when I drink versus when I don't drink. I definitely notice a difference. Like, I would be disingenuous if I admitted otherwise. But that being said, I think hydrating with the water is really important. That helps a lot. But I also think taking a step back and thinking about your relationship with your devices more than your relationship with alcohol in terms of contributing to sleep, right? Like, that's a thing. Yeah, Jerry, go ahead.
Is anybody on the magnesium train for sleep?
We talked about this. We talked about magnesium. No. This is.
I'm so sorry. I was so late. I got
no, Jerry. You are exactly when you're supposed to.
I got pulled into a conversation on Instagram, and so I'm so sorry. I was so all of a sudden I went, oh shit, and then that's when I jumped on. So I'm sorry.
No, this is good. We actually talked about this earlier, but I'd actually like to give my perspective on magnesium. Jillian, you got something? Do you want to have a question?
So I have Crohn's too, and
right.
That was actually something my integrative GI had also recommended but it's a very specific, it's magnesium glycinate based on like also how my body, I guess, metabolizes certain things. So I take that religiously every night and it helps. So
it's also great for migraines. So here's the interesting thing. I was on magnesium glycinate, and then my migraine specialist said, you need to go on magnesium oxide. I'm like, what the heck? By the way, I have absolutely no idea what the difference is. I haven't done the research yet.
So what I would say, Jerry, what I talked about earlier is that, first of all, there's a really great website called Consumer Lab, and you can get access to it through your public library. But because it's a paid subscription service, but most public libraries have access to it. And they actually test the supplements properly. To first of all tell you if a supplement says it has magnesium oxide in it, how much percentage of it actually contains that. So that's the first thing I would tell you to do is to look at that. There's lots of different types of magnesium, right? And it could be.
I want to know why. I mean, there's 3 and 8. There's glycinate. There's what's the other one with the C?
There's caltrate.
Right. I mean, so there's when is someone just going to shove them all into one pill? Just put it all into one pill.
They all have different things. So some of them make you take a dump, quite a bit. But the thing that I'll say is that there's mixed research on sleep and magnesium, and then you also have to think about if you're on any what I call life-saving medication, and I was talking about this earlier. So if you are on like high blood pressure medication, things of that nature, you're definitely going to want to find out if there's any adverse effects between the supplement and, like, say, your hormone replacement therapy, right?
Blood pressure medication. I didn't know that. And I appreciate you mentioning that. I feel like I'm an official old person now because I'm on high blood pressure medication. So I never heard that it could have a conflict with magnesium. So thank you for mentioning.
I just think every supplement you should always vet with your doctor. And I used to go into because Jerry knows I go to every doctor. There's not, if it's a gist, I have it, like endocrinologist, and like I have a specialist for that. But I always laugh when they say, well, what about the supplements? I'm like, what do you care? And then I realize, I pretend I'm smart on it.
So here's what I'm going to say. I don't know for a fact, but I do have a friend who was having some issues, and she took ashwagandha, which is another very popular supplement for perimenopause. And all of a sudden she goes to the doctor, and the doctor's like, your liver function is way up. This isn't a good thing. And they're like, and then asked about the supplements, and the doctor was like, you need to stop this. Right. So, and Jerry, you're more than welcome to, email me or DM me. Indy has my contact information if you don't have it, but I'm happy to kind of tell you a little bit more about how to do some research on your own supplements, right? From reputable sources.
Thank you so much. I've been so lucky, Indy, what you said, when you find a doctor and they're just great.
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate a number of years ago. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I got to a cardiologist who broke away from kind of corporate healthcare down here and started a concierge cardiology practice. And the guy's like so busy now. I bless his heart, but he's just running himself ragged. But he still allows me to check in with him. I don't have any cardiology problems, thank God, but he allows me to check in with him occasionally. So I'm very lucky that I have him as a resource. The one thing, and I forget which version of magnesium it is, but I had taken, someone I followed online, not you, Indy, but someone I follow online said, oh, this is what I'm taking. And I went out and got it, took it. And I felt I've never been a drinker, except for a few times in college, so I know the feeling, but I was so hungover the next day that I could barely function. Right now I use a magnesium gel, which is great. And again, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but the one kind of shock of menopause for me, I haven't slept in 10 years. So I always say I sleep in shifts. So in total, I may sleep for 6 hours, but it's 3 hours from 9 to 12, because then I get up at midnight I get up at midnight. Next time I'm online at 2:00 in the morning, guess who I'll be looking for, Indy? I'll be checking Instagram to see if you're on. And then I'm up for a couple of hours and then I go back to sleep. So it's very odd because it's a very deep sleep, but when I hear people say, oh, I sleep 7 hours, I'm like, 7 hours straight? I mean,
it's hard. And certainly menopause, like the hot flashes and all those things, it's very real. And that's part of all of this is because you're so tired, you're so drained. And another thing is our bodies are generally magnesium depleted. I mean, it's one of the we are depleted in magnesium, we're depleted in vitamin D, but again, it's also really hard to get a read on it because you'd have to take several blood tests, because you can go for a blood test and then what you're eating and whatever will change that from, it's like, how are you supposed to?
Yeah, the problem is that it's like a snapshot, and I can show you, Jerry, it's not funny, but it is kind of funny chart that shows your hormones when you are menstruating regularly, and then your hormones once you're going into perimenopause. So if you could picture a lasagna when you're menstruating regularly, and then you have this crazy spaghetti and meatballs with some shrimp thrown in a complete hot mess, showing all the different hormones all over the place. That's what your body is doing during perimenopause. And so getting a snapshot of, at a point in time isn't really helpful.
Yeah.
Because, you could have had some leafy greens that could have been oh, you're not magnesium deficient, you're good. Right before. Whereas if you don't normally have leafy greens, but it just happened to be you had leafy greens, then so there's a lot of also scams around menopause testing and all those things. But the best thing you can do is, sounds like you have a good doctor you can check in with, which is great. But really just do the homework on magnesium. I don't take magnesium. I try to stay away from as many supplements as possible. That's because I had my first kidney stone this year, and, talking about the old train. And what I found out from the urologist is that really they're
oh, I don't have a urologist. Look at that. You beat me.
Yeah. But I'm always glad to try and exceed in some way, shape, or form. But what I would say, though, is that what I learned is that the more supplements you take, that stuff goes through your kidneys. That's how that's processed. And that puts more stress on your kidneys and makes you more likely to develop a kidney stone. And if you've never had a kidney stone, I can assure you, you do not want one. Okay. Whereas the more that you can get through your vitamins and minerals through food, that goes through your regular digestive system, right? And your body generally, I'm not a GI doc, right? Generally processes it better if you're getting your vitamins and minerals through food, right? Than through pills.
Yeah,
So if
for
you
sure.
ever go to a dietitian, most dietitians will tell you to try and get as much of your vitamins and minerals, your macro and your micronutrients through food, because it's easier for your body to process it as
We
well.
pee most of the vitamins that we buy, all the supplements, we pee most of them out. They're
Yeah.
not actually getting to where we need
Yeah.
them to. But
So-
it's so hard. And that's why I would say real food heals. Like all of this, the best thing you can do is eat properly. But man,
So this has been a really great conversation, and I welcome anyone to follow up with me. I'm Just Go Long on Instagram, as in literally the word Just Go Long. And Indy, I want to thank you for sharing all this amazing information. And people can find you. You're pretty much on Instagram. Are you on TikTok as well?
I am, but go to Instagram.
Instagram. So your personal is Indy Lee, one word.
Indy Lee. One word.
And the brand is Indy
_ Lee.
Okay. Well, I thank all of you for tuning in to Going the Distance. To watch past interviews, you could check out our YouTube channel. You could follow us on Instagram, as I just said, and there'll be links to those in the show notes, which I will send out. But really appreciate everyone's time. Appreciate you all tuning in. And this was a wonderful event. So thank you all very much.